Hi there. Today I would like again to talk about taking an old basic game and making it into something more modern. So a while ago I have posted my porting of the Super Star Trek basic game to Java, and I got several nice comments from viewers and friends, and a friend pointed out about a game that he loved in the TRS-80 platform in the 80s, called Santa Paravia and Fiumaccio. So I had never heard about that game, but I went and dug a bit and it was great. So this is a city strategy management game that kind of inaugurates what later will become the genre of games like Civilization or 4K grand strategy games like Crusader Kings. And it, based on what I've seen, the beginning of this genre is a very simple game in BASIC from the 60s called Hammurabi. And in 1978, a guy named George Blank took some ideas from Hammurabi but expanded it and put it in an Italian setting of the 1400s, where you're a feudal lord and you have to manage your city, you have to feed your people, you have to build up defenses, you have to improve your city. And so you progress through the ranks, through knight and baron, duke, and many others until you become king and eventually win the game. So that's a very nice game. Originally, it was published in one of those magazines with basic code listings for the TRS-80 in 1978. Later in the 80s, some commercial versions of the game came out of it for the Apple II platform, for the Commodore 64 platform, and we're gonna see this version a bit later in this video. So I thought that was quite interesting, and I wanted to have a web game version of Santa Paravia so that anyone could play it in a convenient and perhaps with a bit of a better user experience, more modern experience of gaming. I found out that actually there was a porting of Santa Paravia to C made in 2000 by a fellow named Thomas Knox. So I have started with Thomas Knox version, and I have made a JavaScript version that's a playable web game. So there's the original basic game in 1978, and then there are some remakes with professional graphics in the 80s, and then there is this grassroots porting in C in 2000, and now I have made my JavaScript implementation based on the C implementation. So in this video I would like first to show you the original game. I will not show the very first version, I will show the Commodore 64 commercial version. Then we are going to see a bit of the game that I have implemented based on it. And then I want to discuss a bit about the process of migrating and some of the kind of the approach that I took and some of the challenges that I had. And yeah, I hope you're gonna find this video entertaining and as fun as I found doing all this stuff. Okay, so this is the opening screen of the Commodore 64 version of Santa Paravia and Fiumaccio. So this is a multiplayer game where each player has their turn. In my implementation, I actually did not put this feature because I figured people would not be interested in rotating in front of a browser to play the game. Of course, we could have thought of a different implementation where you have a true multiplayer game where each one is playing in their own browser, but that may be an interesting project for the future. For now, on my version, I have ignored this. So here I'm gonna put one player, and here we should give a name to our character playing. And I'll choose level 3 master. Okay, so this is the first screen that you see every turn. So it's basically giving me options that have to do with production of grain. So my grain reserve, it's about 43,000 bushels, and my demand is about 11,600. We can see the price of grain, we can see the price of the land, and of course, the more land you have, more grain you're able to produce. And also, we have 1,000 florins, the coin of the game, in reserve. So every turn, the rats are going to eat a certain percentage of our grain reserve. So we should keep some reserves, but we also should not try to stockpile too much. We might just lose it. So we had also, you had weather as something that varies. So we had excellent weather, great harvest. So that gives us a lot of bushels. So from this screen, we actually can do three things. Either we can go to the grain market and buy extra grain. We don't need it right now. Or we can go to the land office and we can buy more land. Or we can press 0 and just continue to the next step in the turn. Well, so I'm going to show you what happens when you go to the grain market. And let's say that I want to sell a bit of grain because we had a great harvest. I'm going to sell just, I don't know, 5,000. And that gave me extra 135 florins. So now I'll exit the grain market and I'm going to go to the land office. So let us buy some land. I'm going to buy a very small amount of land. So we are back close to our original 1,000 florins. And this is this screen, we already know it. I'm gonna press 0 and we go to the next one. So now we have to release grain to feed our population, and the grain demand is 11,600 steers. So I'm gonna release more than that because I've learned playing this game that you need to release a bit over that, so you ensure that no one starves and you have more peasants being born. So we have 38k ish, so that should not be a problem. I'm gonna release, let's say, 13,000. Okay, so we had 62 serfs born this year, 33 died, so we have a net improvement of around 30 serfs. I'm gonna hit any key. So we had to spend 75 florins paying our army. And here we have the state revenue screen. That's another screen where we can make decisions that have to do with taxes. So we have customs duty, and we currently is 25%. We can, let's raise it to 37. Okay, that's fine. And then sales tax, let's say it's 12%. The thing is, the lower your taxes, the more you attract commerce and sales and nobles to your city. And the most fair is your justice, the more you attract people. But when you you raise taxes and you make your justice harsher, you get more tax money. So it's kind of a balance that you have to decide how to achieve. So this is supposed to be a crude map of your town. It's a bit hard to understand all the elements here, but you can see that we have a river crossing. And then on the top right of the screen, you can see tents with horses and warriors holding a sword. So this basically gives you a hint of how many soldiers you have defending your city. And you may get attacked if your city is too wealthy and without relevant defenses. So on the top left of the screen, then you can see a plowman and a plow and a horse. I hope you can see it. In what it's sort of a purple hayfield. And then we have our city with some roads and already some structures.
and the more we build structures later in the game, the more we populate this map. So I'm gonna hit any key to go to the screen where we can actually build improvements to our city. So here we can build our palace or a cathedral, and you actually build it in stages. They call it pieces. So one palace piece is 3,000 florins. You can build mills, and you can equip more army platoons, and you can build markets. So we have 1,925 florins in our treasure. So the only things we could do is to buy a market or equip another platoon. I'm gonna choose the market. So you see now we're down to 925 florins. And then we hit any key. We go back to the screen that's on the start of each turn, because we completed one turn. Now we are on the next one. So you see we have a bit of a more difficult situation here because we had bad weather, poor harvest, only about half of what we made last year. And but yeah, rats only 82% of our reserves. That's good. So we still have a big reserve. And then you see we keep doing it like this. There will be some surprises, like you can get attacked, then you see some different screens. And sometimes if your city grows enough to justify it, you get your title, that here is Sir, right? Because you're just a lowly knight. But as your city improves, you get other titles. You can be called, I don't know, Baron. And that you make your progress until you are king and you win the game, or you die without achieving that goal. So I'm gonna stop here the demo of the original game. As I told you, the true original game is fully text-based, so you don't have these graphics. I thought it would be interesting to show you this version, which is a commercial version made for the Commodore 64 platform in the 80s. That's slightly more elaborate in terms of screens and graphics, of course, considering graphics of that time. So the next thing I would like to share with you is my own version of this game and how it relates to that. So let's go to that section. Okay, so this is my version. So it starts giving you the option to read the instructions, which we're gonna do. Yeah, there's not many of them because much of the text of the instructions had to do with multiplayer. And as I explained, I am not using, I don't have multiplayer in this implementation. So let's choose Journeyman difficulty. And here we type name of the ruler. So this is the equivalent of the first screen. We see that unfortunately we start this game with bad weather and a poor harvest, so we only have 28.5K steers in our grain reserve, although it's still enough to fulfill our grain demand. So here we don't have to go to the markets, right? The grain market or the land office. We can straight away go and say, okay, we wanna buy or sell grain or buy or sell land. I will not do actually any of these things because we don't have that many that much grain to sell. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, okay, how much grain we will release for consumption. So we can either choose an amount, or we can say, okay, I want to release the minimum, which is the bare minimum for people to survive, or the maximum, which is, I think, what I will go for. So that's apparently a good decision because we had 120 serfs born and only 42 died. And also 200 more moved to our city. So you see, there's been some benefits of this decision. And now we come to the taxes screen. And on the taxes screen, I think we can improve, raise the sales tax to, let's say, 27%. And I'm sorry, the customs duty. Sales tax, 15% should be fine. Income tax, 10. And justice, let's keep it moderate. So this is my version of the city map. It's not great, but still has the original elements. So I have 2,000 florins. I can buy a marketplace. So you can see that our marketplace now shows up here. And as you buy other things, you can get more and more of the city fleshed out. And here we have just one platoon of 25 soldiers. So I'm not gonna do that right now, but if we keep increasing the number of soldiers, we keep populating this map. Here also you can see some statistics, how many noble soldiers, clergy, merchants, serfs, land, treasury you have. And if we continue, we simply go back to the original screen. So now we had a normal weather with an average harvest, so we probably could sell some grain. And I'm gonna sell, I don't know, 10,000. Still we have a pretty decent grain reserve. We could have probably sold more. I'm gonna buy some land. And let's buy like 100 hectares. Okay, that should be good enough for us to continue. Oh, this wasn't a good year, was it? And we have almost 3,000 florins, so we could buy a mill, for instance. And yeah, you see this is, let me equip a platoon. Do we have money? Yes, we do. Yeah, you see, we keep improving our city. So this is my rendering of the Santa Paravia game. And you can find it on this address. I'm gonna put the link in the notes of this video, but it's on my GitHub account, Santa Paravia Web. And now I would like to discuss a bit about the process of coming to this result and some of the decisions that I have made and how this worked. Okay, so before we look at the source code that I actually used, I think it's interesting to see a page of the original magazine where this was published, when you can see here the beginning of the listing of the basic code that goes on and on for many pages. That was published on the Soft Side magazine in 1978. So I read about this in this Games Nostalgia website. They have this article, The Fascinating Story of Santa Paravia and Fiumaccio. I encourage you to go and read this nice article. And as I told you, the original version was without graphics. Well, there was a crude map, but most of the game had no graphics. And it just looked a bit like this. But interesting thing, you see the code is just basic code, and as usual we have a lot of global variables with they basically have one character to character names like X and Y, and they explain in the text what these variables are meant, but still my previous experience with Super Star Trek, porting a large game from basic to something else, it's quite a challenge because you have to figure out what all those variables mean. In some of the logic, it's convoluted because basic was not conducive to very clear reading of a program. So I actually used, as I mentioned, the Thomas Knox version made in 2000. Actually got it on this GitHub user darkf. I think he or she made some improvements to this, but it's pretty much the code from the 2000 C port. And you can see here that we have we already see constants and variables and function names that have much more meaningful reading to them, right? Names that are just kind of obvious when you say things like, okay, I'm gonna buy soldiers, and what that means. And the game basically moves around a structure called player, which it's defined here. So it's basically, this is the game state for each player. In my case, I only have one player. Still has the same name, but you see this is all the content of all these variables. It's pretty much the current state of the game, and some of these attributes, they can have one of multiple values as defined here. And then we have the code. It's just using a lot of input output. It's usual input output using printf and getAs. We initialize the game here, and we have all these different starting values, and then we have these functions for adding revenue, attacking neighbor. But you see that the interaction happens inside these functions. You have, you're printing things to the console, and sometimes you're taking some values from the console. So if we check the main function, what it does, it calls some it prints the header and initializes the game, and then which is done here, and then we go to this play game function that's checking. So you initialize all the players, and basically while you have some players who are still alive and are not winner, you keep going for a new turn. In the new turn, you generate the harvest, whether it's a good, bad harvest, etc. And you set new random land and grain prices, and then you give basically move the player to the screen where they can buy or sell grain or land, and then when they choose how much grain is going to be released for the serfs, and then we check if anyone is going to attack us, and then you have the adjust tax screen, and then you draw the map. You have the state purchases. That's where you can buy things like palaces and castles, so on. You check if we have a new title, and you just keep doing that turn after turn. So this is what the C version does. So let me show you my own source code. So first thing, I've done something that is not too tidy, which is having a single JavaScript file with all the source code, and we have 1.3, 1.4k lines of code here. But honestly, I was not too worried about making this very structured and easy to extend. I was honestly just trying to make it a decent, but also a decent version without putting a lot of effort into it. Now, I would actually like to start by showing you around this code. I would like to start at the end. So here we are not printing things with printf and getting input with getAs like in the C version, but the user is making choices by clicking buttons and typing values in certain fields. So I didn't want really to use any kind of gaming framework. I have nothing against frameworks, but this is a very, very simple game, and the problem with frameworks is that they kind of age. So in 10 years from now or 20 years from now, if I use a certain um, JavaScript gaming framework that's well hyped now, it may not be used at all and might have been, that you cannot find documentation, people cannot understand easily the abstraction. So I really wanted to build this pretty much from scratch. So I started by creating a structure that I call screens, and then for each screen that we can show, say, okay, I have an image that I may or may not show in this area, and then we have some text, right? And the text is, in this case, this, what you show beneath the image. And then you can have some buttons. And these buttons will be, they're gonna have some strings, right? That is what you show in the buttons. Let me, by the way, show you the corresponding to this particular screen. So here it is. So we have actually a pre-process function. So I am calling a function prior to showing the screen, which is this prepare by cell grain. It's going to generate some random values, and then we show a certain image. And by the way, I have used these SVG images that I got free online. Yeah, that's very nice that artists they share these graphics free with us, and I have I have recognized the artist where I got this art from Nico's clip art collection, so you can find the link together with the source code. So that said, let me continue showing you this screen. So we have buttons, and you have the button text, right? And then you have another attribute that basically it's a function that gets called when you click that button. And then what I do is I start at one of these screens, of course the start screen. And then when you click a button, for instance, I say, okay, I want to read the instructions. We call the function advance2. And this advance2 is gonna send you to another of these screens. So this shows the instructions and give you more options. So let me find the advance2 function. I would like to show you quickly this function. Still up there. Not really. Yeah, here it is. So you see that this is kind of the core engine of the game. So what I do here is every time you advance, you pre-process the pre-process function, if there is such a function, otherwise we do nothing. And then we check if the player has won the game or changed title. And then, yeah, we basically update all the screens. So you can see that that makes it very easy that we just define the entire sequence of screens of the game just using this very clear arrangement. And as you can imagine, these events that we click, like there was one, for instance, to prepare the buy and sell grain screen. So let's take a look at the implementation of this guy as an example. So you see that this is calling functions that were like the functions that we had in the C implementation: generate, harvest, new land, grain prices, etc. So this is actually what we have here on the top of the game. You see, I basically copied and pasted the C implementation and then started making small changes. So this would become JavaScript code rather than C code. And it's amazing how it's not a lot. I mean, there's of course some differences. For instance, the way we define a class in JavaScript is different than the way we define a class in C, but it's not, I mean, we can put them kind of side by side here. You see yeah, this is the one. So we define a struct that is not even a class, right? It's not C++, but it's a plain C. So what I meant by a class in this case, it's a data structure. But you see, we defined it like this, and here we define it slightly different as a class, but still it's pretty much the same concept. One thing that actually caused me some grief was there's many points where we have conversions of float or double values to integers. And originally I was just doing the same conversion, but they actually mean different things in C and JavaScript. In C, they are going to take the floor of that number. And here in JavaScript, it's actually going to round the number. So that's something that I had to change. If I'm not mistaken, I'm using a math floor. For instance, let me find another good example of this. So yeah, this one where we're just changing the treasury. Let us find the equivalent line here. So what are we doing? We are adding revenue. Yeah, here I used, as I mentioned, a math floor rather than just a cast to int, and that actually it led to a very unexpected behavior. So it, of course, the program still executed and I could play the game, but it was way too easy. And I actually, who found out was a friend of mine. He called my attention that, yeah, this is, you know, I could win a game in a couple minutes. I said, well, how come? You were supposed to spend definitely longer on that. And then I checked, and yeah, because of these rounding errors, the game was just behaving very differently than expected. So that's, yeah, these things can get quite tricky. But you see here how we, it's not that different, right? So if you compare if you look at the C code, and then we look at the JavaScript code, it's just less different than what we would expect. And that's, I think, the story. If you have specific questions, if anyone is going through this code and you have specific questions about how something was accomplished, please send them my way. But I hope that gives you an idea. I mean, first, that it introduces you, assuming that you are not familiar with it, that it introduces you to this very nice, very fun strategy game, and that now you can play for free on this address, and that gives you an idea in the process of how we can get some of these gems from the past of gaming and then turn them easily into something that we can have fun with again. And I had lots of fun doing this, and I hope you also had watching this video. So till next time.